Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on updating our battle and our monster details scene to go ahead and display our new EXP bar. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as complete source code for this video. There'll also be links to previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. So now that we've created our new EXP bar class, and we've updated our UI for our battle scene and our monster details scenes to display this new component, we need to actually add in our logic for allowing our monsters to store and gain experience so they can actually level up. And so to do this, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into our monsters JSON data file. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some new properties, so then that way we can keep track of how much experience our monster currently has, how much experience a monster is worth, and as well as add a new field for our attack. And so we initially added in a base attack for what our monster starts with. But what we want to do is actually have what their current attack is. And so then that way, as they level up, we can actually increase their attack values. And so what we're going to do for all of our monsters, we're going to add these new properties. And then that way we can use them later inside our actual classes. And so what we'll do is after our current level, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new property. We're going to call this current attack. And so for our current attack, we're going to go ahead and set that to 5. So it'll be the same as their base attack until they level up. And then what we'll do is actually we're going to move that above our current level. So it's right next to our base attack. And so we'll have our current level. And then what we'll do is we'll do base EXP. And so for our base EXP, this is just at a base level how much a monster's worth. And so if a monster's stronger, so like the third evolution form of a monster, they might be worth more experience than the first iteration of it. Or if it's a really common monster, so like in Pokemon games, like the bug type Pokemon like Caterpie, it might be worth a little bit less because it's easier to defeat. So for this, we're just going to do 50, and then we'll need a field to keep track of our current experience. And so for our current experience, for our data set right now, so when our monsters are level 5, this is going to reflect how much experience they would actually need to be that current level. And we'll get more into that later once we go into the math of how we're actually going to level up. So then what we'll want to do is we want to apply these new fields to all of our monsters. So I'm just going to copy all the way up to base attack here, and we're going to replace current level. And so for Carnodusk, what we'll do is for a base EXP, we're going to change this to B52. Ignivolt, we're going to paste, and we'll go ahead and change this to B51. So we're just going to make these a little bit different for each monster, just so they're worth different values. Let's go ahead and do Aqua Valor. We'll leave at 50. Frost Saber. We'll go ahead and do 53. And then we'll go ahead and save. So then let's go ahead and jump over to our type definition file so we can add these new properties. And so we'll go into our type def.js file, and then we'll come right down below our attack IDs, and we'll go ahead and add in our new fields. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this property here for our base attack. I'm going to paste it 3 times. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do current attack, and then I'll do base EXP. And then we want to go ahead and do our current EXP. And then real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and paste over what the comments are. And so we'll have current attack, the current attack value of this monster, base EXP value of this monster, and our current EXP of this monster has. All right, so now we have our new properties in our monsters JSON file. What we're going to do next is we're going to work on updating our enemy and player and our battle monster core classes to have some new properties and methods that are going to help support us as we update our battle scene to allow us to gain experience. And the first class we're going to jump into will be our core battle monster class. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and update our base attack to actually use our new current attack field that will be tying to our monster. And then that way, as our monster levels up, when we grab their attack value, we're actually going to use the correct value and not the original attack. All right, so the next thing we'll want to do is we're going to go ahead and add a method for updating our text string that's tied to our level that we display. And so currently when we create our health bar component, we have a hard-coded string for displaying our monster's level. And what we'll want to do is as our monster gains experience, they might level up during the middle of battle, and we might need to update the string to reflect that. And so we're going to go ahead and just set this to an empty string, and then we're going to go ahead and have a method that's going to allow us to set that value. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to change this to an empty string. And then right after we create this text here, and so for our method, we'll go ahead and make it protected, and we're going to do set monster level text. And then real quick, we'll go ahead and create that method. So right above our method here, let's go ahead and add in our new method. And we'll go ahead and add in our type definition real quick. And so this is going to be protected. And we're going to do returns void. So then what we'll want to do here is we're just going to go ahead and we need to reference this. So we'll need to store a property on our class. We're going to actually reference this text game object. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Let's change this to this, and we'll do protected. And then what we'll do is come up to the top of our class, and let's go ahead and add in that new property. And so we'll do our monster health bar level text. I'm going to copy this here, paste it, and this is going to be a text game object. And then what we'll do is we'll come back down to our method, and let's go ahead and update our text value. And so we'll do this, our new protected property, and we'll do set text. And so what we'll do, this will be the same string we had before, and so it'll be L, and we want to reference our monster's current level, so we'll do this, that level. And then real quick, we just need to go ahead and update our reference down here to reference our new property since we changed that. We'll go ahead and save. All right, so next what we'll do is in our enemy battle monster class, we're going to go ahead and add a getter to get our base EXP for the monster that we're currently fighting. And then that way later in our battle scene, we can reference that to know how much experience to give to our player. And so let's go ahead and open up that class. And so we'll have our enemy battle monster. And what we'll do is let's add a new getter to our class. So we'll do get base EXP value. And we're going to return this, and we'll do our monster details. And we want to go ahead and grab our base EXP. And real quick, we're going to add in our type. And so we'll have type, and this is going to be a number. All right, so finally, what we'll do is let's jump over to our player battle monster class, and we'll go ahead and add some new methods there. So what we're going to do in our player battle monster class is we're going to need a method to allow us to update our monster's experience as they defeat monsters during battle or we catch them. And so let's go ahead and add a new public method, and we'll do update monster exp. And so inside here, we'll go ahead and expect the amount of experience that we just received. So we'll do gained exp. And what we're going to do for the time being is we're just going to do to do. Besides this method, we want to go ahead and have a method to update our exp bar. And so as we gain experience, we want to go ahead and animate it according to how much experience we get. And so we're just going to do update monster exp bar, and when we call this method, we'll want to go ahead and provide a callback. So then that way, once our animation's complete, kind of like what we do with our death or our health bar animations, we'll call that only once we finish doing everything we want to do. And so we'll expect our callback for our argument. And then what we'll do here is we'll want to go ahead and call our exp bar class, and we'll do our set meter percentage animated method. And so for the time being, I'm just going to go ahead and hard code this to 0.5. We'll come back once we add in our actual values. And then for our options, we'll go ahead and specify our callback. But for our callback, we'll also want to do additional logic, not just the callback that was provided. And so let's go ahead and make a new function. And so inside here, what we'll want to do is after we gain experience, there's a few possibilities that could happen. Our monster could get enough experience where they level up, and so we'll need to update our monster's level text. And so we'll go ahead and call our new method we just added. If they do gain enough experience to level up, their HP could change. And so what we'll want to do is inside our update monster experience method here, this is where we're going to actually update our monster stats. And so because that's already happened when we call this method here, we just need to go ahead and update our display of what those values are. And so we'll want to go ahead and update our max health and their current health based on whatever happens inside here. We don't necessarily need to know that it happened here. We'll just constantly set it anytime we gain experience. And so this will make more sense once we tie everything together. But mainly, all we're doing here is just updating the UI to make sure we have the right values. And so what we'll do is we'll do this. We'll reference our max health, and we'll set it equal to our monster details. And let's go ahead and grab our max HP from our monster. And then let's go ahead and do this. We want to do update our monster's health, and we'll reference our current health. Finally, after we've updated all of these things, we'll want to go ahead and do our callback that we provided here. All right, so now that we've added in our logic to our player, enemy, battle, monster classes, we need to go ahead and start adding in our logic to our battle scene. So let's go ahead and open up that class. And what we're going to want to do is currently, after we finished checking after all the attacks happen, we go to our post-battle sequence check. And we check to see if our monsters have fainted. And if our enemy monster faints, we just display a message that says, hey, you've gained some experience. And then we go to our finished state. So at this point, what we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and make a new battle state. So then that way we can put all of our logic tied to gaining experience inside there. And then once that's done, we'll transition to the next appropriate state. And so for the time being, this will be finished because we only fight one monster at a time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and update this to be from finished. And we're going to do gain experience. And then what we'll do is let's jump up to our battle states. And let's go ahead and add in this new state. And so we'll have gain experience. So let's come down to the bottom of our class. And let's copy this block of code here before we add a state. And let's go ahead and add a brand new state for our gain experience. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this here for where we go to our finished state. And then I'm just going to go ahead and replace the rest of our code inside our onEnter method here, our onEnter function here. All right, so at a high level, when we reach this state, all we're really going to want to do is we want to go ahead and update our EXP bar based on the experience gained. And then we want to transition to our finished state. And so what this means is after we defeated a monster and we reached the state, what we're going to want to do is determine how much that enemy monster was worth in terms of experience points. And so to do this, we'll need to grab our experience value from that enemy battle monster class, which we just added, and then we'll need some type of utility function to go ahead and do that calculation. Once we know how much experience that's worth, we're going to go ahead and add that to our main active monster. And what we'll also do is we'll add support for adding it to our inactive monsters for our party. And then similar to like newer types of Pokemon games where your whole party gains experience, we're going to go ahead and do that as well. And so once we calculate that experience, we need to go ahead and update each of our monsters to go ahead and gain that experience. And so what we'll need to do for each monster, we're going to need to keep track of if that monster actually leveled up. And if they did, then we'll need to go ahead and bump up their stats based on some type of value. So as an example, when our monster levels up, we'll bump up their HP, we bump up their attack, and of course we bump up their current level. And we'll want to keep track of these so then that way we can display as messages in our battle scene. Once we do all of that, we'll want to make sure we go ahead and update our EXP bar so we can go ahead and animate it. And then finally, we'll go ahead and transition to our finished final state once that happens. So go ahead and start doing all of this logic. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and focus on calculating our experience that we need for our monster. So for the time being, we're just going to create a utility function that's going to go ahead and return a mock value, and we'll come back to our math later. We just want to go ahead and get this functioning so we can see everything work end to end. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make a new variable, do const. We're going to do gained exp for active monster. And we're going to go ahead and call a new function that we don't have yet, but we're going to call this calculate exp gained from monster. So what this function is going to do is it's going to take our base experience that we get from our enemy monster, and we're going to take their level, and then we're going to go ahead and return a number back to us to know how much experience we get. And so for this, we'll do our active enemy monster. We'll grab our base exp value. We'll do our active enemy monster, and we want to go ahead and grab their level. And then finally, the last argument we'll expect for this function is we want to know if this is our active monster or not. So if our active monster is the one that defeated the monster, they would gain the most experience points, and then everyone else in the party would get a reduced amount of that overall experience, like half. So we're just going to go ahead and set this to true. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this block of code here, and we want to do the same thing for calculating how much an inactive monster gains. So we'll do gained exp for inactive monster. And the only thing we need to change this to be false. So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create this function. So under our utils folder, we're going to go ahead and make a new file. So we'll go to utils, and I'm just going to call this leveling utils.js. And inside here, we're just going to export out a new function. We'll name it the function we just created. And so we just want to go ahead and return a number. And so for the time being, just go ahead and return 10. Oh, and then actually what we need to do is we need to go ahead and add in our arguments. So let's go ahead and add in base exp. We'll do current level. And then we'll go ahead and do is active monster. And so we'll worry about our types and everything later. I just want to get this working. All right, so now what we'll want to do is we'll need to go through all of our monsters in our party and actually update their experience based on these values here. So what we'll do is we're just going to do this. We'll grab our scene data. Let's go ahead and grab our player monsters. And for each of our monsters, we'll do our loop. And so we'll have our monster and we'll have our index. And so what we're going to do is we're going to check our index to see if it's equal to our active player monster index. If it is, that monster will gain our active monster experience, and then every other monster will gain the inactive one. And so what we'll do is we'll just do if, and we'll do our index is equal to this, our active player monster index. Then what we'll want to do is we'll do our active player monster, and we'll call our new method update monster exp. And we'll go ahead and pass in our gained exp for active monster. All right, and as for our else, we'll just go ahead and add a to-do, so we'll come back and add that later. So currently for our party, we only support one active monster, and so we add support for passing in multiple monsters, but we don't actually create instances of our player battle monster class for each of those monsters, and so we'll need to do that later. All right, so the next thing we want to do is for our monsters that are gaining experience, we want to go ahead and add messages to our battle scene UI to show how much experience that monster is gaining. And so we're going to need a way to keep track of all of the messages we want to display to the player. In addition to our EXP messages, we'll also want to display messages if our monster levels up. And so we'd say, hey, this monster is now level 5, their attack went up by 2, their HP went up by 10. And so we'll need a way to do that as well. And so the first thing we'll do is right above our for loop, let's go ahead and create a new variable, do const messages, and we'll make this an array to keep track of those messages. And so real quick, I'm going to go ahead and add in our type. And so for our type, this is just going to be a string array. So then as our monsters are gaining experience, what we'll do is we'll do our messages, we'll do push, and then what we'll do is we'll say our monster's name, and we'll say how much experience they gained. And so we'll reference our scene data, we'll grab our player monsters, we'll go ahead and use our index, and then we'll go ahead and grab our name property. And we'll say gained, and then the amount of experience they gained. And so if it's an active monster, it's going to be our gained exp for active monster, and then we'll say exp. Likewise, for our inactive monsters, we'll do the same thing. And so we'll go ahead and paste this, and then we'll just do gained for our inactive monster. So for our stat changes, what we'll want to do is inside our update monster experience method, we're going to need to know if our monster actually leveled up, and if they did, we want to go ahead and return any stats that we need to go ahead and update. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new utility function to do this calculation. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're just going to return, and we're going to do handle monster gaining experience. And so we'll go ahead and pass in our monster details. So then that way we have our current monster stats. And then we'll also go ahead and pass in the amount of experience that they just gained. So then over in our leveling utils file, let's go ahead and make that new function. So we'll do export function, and we'll do handle monster gaining experience. And so for this, we're going to go ahead and expect our monster argument, and then the gained exp. All right, so what we're going to end up doing in this function is this is what we'll actually handle where we calculate if our monster actually leveled up based on the experience they just gained. And then when they level up, this is where we'll randomly update our stats and apply those to our monster. So for the time being, what we'll want to do is keep track of what stat changes we'll support, and we'll go ahead and return those. So we're going to go ahead and hard code some values. So we'll just do const, and we're going to do stat changes. And so inside this variable, and so we're going to go ahead and make this an object. And what we'll do is we'll do level, we'll do 0, we're going to do attack, do 0, and then we'll go ahead and do health, and we'll do 0. And so for the time being, when our monster levels up, what we would do is bump our level by 1 if it was just 1, or if they gain enough experience with multiple levels, we'd go ahead and put that value here. And then we'd also bump up their max HP and then their current attack value based on whatever happens here. And so with our stat changes, we're just going to go ahead and return this for now, and that will make sure everything's working. And then real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a type for these stat changes because we'll be referencing this type in multiple locations. This type will be returned from our player battle monster class here, and then we'll also need to reference that in our battle scene. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to paste over our type definition real quick, and we'll go through it. And so we're going to call this stat changes. And so for our stat changes, it'll be an object, and it's basically going to be that level, health, and attack that we just defined down below. And then real quick, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just add our type definition to this. And so I'm going to leave those blank, but then for returns, I'm going to go ahead and return our stat changes. So then back over in our player battle monster class, let's go ahead and import this new function. And I'm going to go ahead and update our return type real quick. And so gained experience will be a number. And we're going to go ahead and return stat changes. So now if we jump back to our battle scene, what we'll want to do is every time we call update our monster exp for our monsters, we'll want to check to see if we do have stat changes. And if we do, then we want to go ahead and add messages to do that. So what I'm going to do is outside our if statement, we're just going to do let stat changes, and we're going to go ahead and add in our type. And so this will be stat change. And then we'll go ahead and set that equal to when we call our update monster experience method here. So then what we can do now is check to see if our level doesn't equal 0. And if it doesn't, then we know we need to bump our stats. And so we're just going to do an if statement. We'll do if our stat changes dot level does not equal 0. Then we want to go ahead and push in some new messages. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to copy this line of code here, go and paste it, but we're going to go ahead and change our text. And so we'll say our monster's name, and we'll say level increased to, and then we want to go ahead and reference our monster's current level. So I'm just going to copy this here. We'll change this and we'll grab level. So we'll have our current level, and we'll go ahead and change. So we'll remove experience. We'll make this an exclamation point. And then we want to go ahead and display a message about what stats actually changed for that monster. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this line, paste it. And so we'll say our monster, we'll say attack increased by. So now we'll go ahead and do our stat changes, and we'll grab the attack value, so whatever we're actually going to bump it by. And then we'll say and health increased by stat changes, and then we'll go ahead and do health. All right, so for the time being, this is going to work for what we're going to display, but later on, if we add in support for things like defense, speed, or other stats that could change, we might want to change in our UI how we display this to the player. But because right now we just have these two stats, we're going to go ahead and just display them as messages to the player. So now that we have our messages, the last thing we want to do is outside of our loop, now we actually need to start doing all of our animations so we can actually update everything. And so the first thing we'll want to do is actually lock our input, so then that way the player can't proceed until they see the messages and the animations we want to show them. So we'll set lock input to true. And now we want to go ahead and do our animation for our EXP bar. And so we'll reference our active player monster. We'll do our update, our monster EXP bar. So we'll do our animation. And then for our callback, what we'll want to go ahead and do is we'll want to go ahead and update our info panel to have the messages we want to display to the player. So we're going to do this. We'll do our battle. We'll do our battle menu. We'll do our update info pane messages and wait for input. We'll pass in our messages array that we created. And now in the callback here, what we want to go ahead and do is just have a delayed call. So after the player acknowledges all the messages, we would go ahead and update our data in our data manager, and then we'll go ahead and go to our finished state. So we're just going to do this, and we're going to do time delayed call, and we'll do 200 milliseconds. We're just going to add a comment. We'll say update the data manager with latest monster data. And so we're going to go ahead and do our data manager, and we will call our store. Let's do set, and we're going to do our data manager store keys, and we're going to do our monsters in party. And we'll go ahead and pass in our monster parties. We'll do our scene data, and we'll do our player monsters. And let's go ahead and copy our set state, and we want to remove it from here, and we're going to place it inside our callback. All right, so the last thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and unlock our input. Otherwise, our player can't acknowledge our messages. And so we're going to go ahead and do that outside of our update and wait for input here. And so we'll go do lock input. We'll set equal to false. All right, so that was a lot of changes, but at a high level, primarily all we did was we added a new state to our battle scene, and we called it gain experience. And then in this state, all we're doing is we're trying to calculate how much experience our monster should gain from defeating an enemy monster. And if we gain enough experience, we want to go ahead and level up our monster and then notify the player about it. And then that way, for each battle, we should have some type of message being either, hey, this monster gained X amount of experience, or hey, they gained this amount of experience and they leveled up, and this is what happened. Currently, we have all of these values hard-coded, which is fine for what we want to do right now. And in our next video, we're going to go ahead and add in our math for actually doing these calculations. Mainly right now, we just want to make sure this is working in our battle scene. All right, so real quick before we test, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to come into our monsters JSON file, and I'm going to go ahead and bump up our current attack for our main monster. And that way it's going to be a little bit easier to test our changes. So now if we come back to our game, let's go ahead and do new game. I'm going to go ahead and come up right to where we're going to encounter some monsters and save. And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and encounter our monster. And so now what should happen is all of our animations should play, our monster should appear. And so right now we have it hard-coded to be 50% of our bar value, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and do a fight. And so now what should happen is when our monster does attack, we should defeat the enemy monster. Perfect. So now what should happen is, hey, they fainted. So now our post-attack check says, hey, you've gained some experience. Oh, and now they want to gain 10 experience. We see our new state is working. We've gained our hard-coded 10 experience. And, oh, so if we hit our spacebar, we're not able to actually proceed to our next state. So what we need to do is let's come back to our code. And we'll go ahead and fix a few bugs. So in our battle scene, let's go ahead and remove that one message where it says you've gained some experience. So what we'll do is in our post-battle sequence check method, let's go ahead and get rid of that message. We'll transition to our new state. All right, and then what we need to do is when we go to our input and we're checking our states for when we accept our input, we just need to go ahead and add in our new state. So let's go ahead and come up to our update method. And so inside our update method here, right after our post-attack check, let's go ahead and copy this. We'll go ahead and paste. And let's go ahead and add in gain experience. All right, so with those changes, we should go ahead and test. So let's go ahead and do continue. We'll go ahead and try to get into a battle. All right, our monster should appear. If we go ahead and fight the enemy monster. All right, so we defeat the monster. Now what should happen is they fainted. We don't see the one message. We gain our 10 experience. Perfect. We hit the spacebar. Battle is over, and we transition back to our world scene. Nice. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is let's jump over to our leveling utils. Let's go ahead and do level 1, and we'll just do 10, and we'll do 10. And what we'll do is let's go ahead and continue our game. Actually, real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our options. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our animations just a little bit faster. Let's do continue. And now let's go ahead and encounter a monster. We'll go ahead and fight. All right, enemies defeated. We've gained 10 experience. So our level increased to our current level, and that's fine because we don't have our logic for actually updating that yet. And then we'll say, hey, our attack increased by 10 and our health increased by 10. Oh, so we see an issue where our value is actually outside of our messages. And so what we'll want to do to fix that, we'll need to go ahead and add in word wrap so we can wrap our words down to here. So real quick, let's jump over to our battle menu class. And we'll come down to our code for our battle text game object line 1. All right, then so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and make a copy of our text game object. So what we'll do is we'll just do our shorthand. Let's just wrap this in an object. And then we'll go ... to copy it. And we'll go ahead and override our properties. And now we want to go ahead and copy this object here. So we're going to do word wrap. And for our word wrap, we'll add width. And so for our width, we'll go ahead and reference our scene. We'll grab our scale. We'll grab our width. And we're going to subtract 20 to keep it within the bounds of our window. So now real quick, let's do one more test. We'll make sure that's working properly. All right, let's go ahead and knock out the enemy monster. We'll see and gain our 10 experience. Our level increased. All right, nice. Now our text is wrapped how we expect. All right, so one last thing we're going to do is we're going to update some of our hard-coded references in our player battle monster class and in our monster details scene to go ahead and call new functions that'll be used for calculating how much EXP should be shown on our EXP bar. So what we'll do is let's jump over to our player battle monster class, and in our add exp bar components, we're going to go ahead and replace our 0.5 with a call to a new function. And so what we'll do is we're just going to do calculate exp bar current value. All right, so then inside this function, what we'll need is our monster's current level and our monster's current exp, so then we can calculate that value. So we'll do this. We'll do our monster details. Let's go ahead and grab our current level. And then we'll go ahead and do this, our monster details. And let's grab our current experience. So then we'll go ahead and jump over to our leveling utils. As we'll go ahead and add this new function. So we'll do export function, and we will have our current level, and we'll have our current EXP. So we'll go ahead and fix our import inside our player battle monster class. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just do return, and we're just going to go ahead and return 5 like we had before. All right, so for our last change, let's go ahead and jump over to our monster detail scene. And what we'll do is when we create our text game objects, first let's go ahead and update our current monsters experience. We have that property now. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do this, and we will do our monster details. And then let's go ahead and grab their current EXP value. And then so for our EXP needed for our next level, we're going to go ahead and replace this with a call to a new function. And so what we'll do is we're just going to do EXP needed for next level. And so we'll go ahead and pass in our monster's current level. And then we'll go ahead and pass in our monster details, and we'll pass in their current experience. And then what we'll do is let's jump over to our leveling utils. Let's go ahead and I'm going to copy this here since we use the same arguments. And I'm going to go ahead and update our name. We'll go ahead and save. And then back in our class, let's go ahead and update our imports. And we'll go ahead and save. And then finally, down in our set meter percentage animated, we want to do the same thing that we did back in our player battle monster class. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump over here. Let's just go ahead and copy this line of code. We'll go ahead and paste it. Go ahead and save. Oh, let's go here with the extra comma. And then we want to go ahead and change this to be this, and then our monster details. And let's go ahead and import our function. And that way everything should work properly. Alright, with that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we'll go ahead and actually add in our functionality that we need in our leveling utils. And so we'll be reviewing the math that we need for calculating how much EXP our monster actually needs. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please follow the links on your screen now.